Hello, this is Preacher Man Piper, Doc Hatfield, coming to you again with another story about my life. I was asked a question here the other day, and so I thought I would answer that question. Now, it's a little bit out of line of my life story, but I wanted to answer that question because I like to help everybody to understand everything. But somebody was watching one of my videos and they saw these dots on my hand, and so they wanted to know what they were and where they come from and why I had them. And I wish I didn't, but I do. And when I got back here to the United States, I was going to get them removed. Now, this was back in the 60s, and they wanted $5,000 to remove one. So each one of them would have been $5,000. So guess what? I still got them. I didn't ever get that kind of money. So anyway, let me tell you that story real quick. I was in the service, and my wife was with me in Germany, and I had gone on what was called TDY. That's temporary duty somewhere else. And so I was there, I don't know, probably somewhere around 2 weeks, and a lieutenant came in late one night, and I was still up, and he said, something you need to know. And I said, what? He said, there's a fellow that is staying with your wife, and I didn't know if you wanted to go home and deal with that or not. I'm not allowed to let you to go home, but he said the Jeep's sitting out there and the key's in it, and it's got plenty of fuel, and I'm not going to need you in the morning. So he said, you do what you feel like you need to do. Well, I got in that Jeep and I took off. And I got back to my place, and we was living off base, and we was living in an apartment up on the third floor of this apartment house. It was really just an old house that had been turned into some apartments, and so I walked up there and opened the door and walked in. All the lights was out, but I could hear all the laughing and the giggling and the stuff going on. And so when you walked into the apartment, you walked into the kitchen. Well, then I walked into the living room, bedroom. It was a combination thing, and they were in the bed, and they were just having the time. And so I reached up by a dresser there and turned on a light, and whenever I did, you'd have thought that World War III had started, and it just scared the living daylights out of them. And of course, he looked at me immediately, and she looked at me immediately, and he jumped up, and he was trying to get his clothes on. He pretty much got them on, and he was trying to leave. And I said, I just don't appreciate the fact that I come home, y'all got a party going on, and you want to break it up just 'cause I'm here. It looks like you'd want me to be in on the party. And so he's trying to still get out the door, and I grabbed him by his shirt here, and I grabbed him by his pants, and I picked him up, and I threw him out the window. I didn't realize what I was doing. I mean, I knew I was throwing him out the window, but it didn't dawn on me we're on the third floor. And so I threw him out the window. And so I turned to go find him because I was going to just really take care of him. And so as I turned to go find him, all of a sudden it felt like a sledgehammer hit me in the back of the head. Well, my wife had picked up a cast iron skillet and hit me in the head, and all I saw was stars. And then all of a sudden, I kind of got myself together. There was a bottle of whiskey laying there, and I took a drink of that whiskey, and I'd run out the door, and I went outside to find him. Well, I didn't see him because I wasn't looking at the right place, and so I went down the road looking for him under every car and everything, screaming to bloody murder his name. And I'd gone about 2 blocks, and all of a sudden the German police stopped by and they picked me up. And so they took me to their headquarters and put me in a jail cell. Now, the jail cell there was not like they are here in America. It was a solid metal room, and it was about 12 foot long and about 6 foot wide, and that was it, and it was real tall. And it was, all it had was a bench in it, didn't have nothing on the bench, and so I ended up laying down, and I guess went to sleep. But the next morning at whatever time it was, I found out it was about 9 o'clock, the door opened. And this man walked in, and he was speaking English, and he said, "I'm your lawyer." I said, "My lawyer for what?" He said, "Well, we're going to court now." He said, "So let me take you where you can wash your face and get you a cup of coffee, and then we'll go in the courtroom." So I went and washed my face, got the cup of coffee, and we walked down a big long hallway and walked in this room. And when I walked in this room, it was a giant courtroom, and we walked in on the floor that we were on, but then you had to go down steps, and you had to, and everybody was down there, and then all the way at the end of that room, back up on a level with me, was a judge sitting there, and he as he was sitting there, they took me over and they put me in this box and had me sit down, and so then they filled up one side of the courtroom with people, because there wasn't nobody in there then. They filled up one side of the courtroom, and everybody was looking at me and saying some kind of words, and I didn't know what they were saying. They was all pointing at me and everything, and they was just looking at themselves and talking, and I thought, well, what in the world's going on around here? And so I asked that lawyer. He had gone down on the other floor to his table, and so I told the guy that was standing there, I guess supposed to be my guard, I said, "What's going on?" Of course, he couldn't speak English. And so he got a hold of that lawyer, and that lawyer come up there. I said, "What are they saying?" He said, "They're calling you the strong man." I said, "The strong man? What for?" I said, "What am I doing here?" So then the judge called everything to attention, and the district attorney, I guess, is what he was. He was a government attorney, and so he got up and he gave his spiel, and I couldn't understand him because it was all in German. And then my lawyer got up and he gave his spiel, and so then the judge looked at the people on the other side and told them to go, and so they left. And I figured they was probably the ones that was going to be deciding whatever fate there was. And I still didn't know why I was there. And so then they wasn't gone 10 minutes, and they come back in, and then the judge, he motioned for a person to come over that was down by him, and the judge told him, said to speak in English so I could understand him. And so I had been found guilty of destroying 15 automobiles. They said I literally went down the street. To this day, I don't remember it, but they said I literally went down the street and I was grabbing the hold of a side of a car, and I would flip the car over, hollering for this guy, telling him to get out from under there because I was going to whoop him. And they said I just went down the street on both sides looking for this guy, and I just kept flipping cars over. And I said, for God's sakes, I said I couldn't do that. And this man said, well, you look like you could. And so I shut up, and he said, well, we have to come back tomorrow. I said, come back for what? He said, for sentencing. I said, sentencing? He said, yeah, you were found guilty. I said, this is the first day. He said, well, that's the way it is. So the next morning, they brought me back in, and the judge found me guilty and sentenced me to 5 years in prison, German prison. And then he took me and they had me go out and go over to a table, and they had me lay my hand down, and they put 5 dots on my hand, and those dots stood for the 5 years that I was in prison. Now, if I'd have got 10 years, they would have put dots down on the lower part of my fingers and put dots down there. And if I'd have got 15, they'd have put 5 over here, and if I'd got 20, they'd put 5 here. Now, if I'd have got 25 years, they would have put a star on the back of your hand, and you're marked for life. Everybody that sees that stuff knows that you've been in prison there in Germany. And so they did that, and then the next day they come and got me, and they took me to the German prison. Now, this German prison was mostly underground. And so they put me in a cell that was about 40 foot long and about 18 feet wide, I think. And it had bunks in it that were made out of chain. And they went up 10 bunks. And the bunks just went down the cell, and there was, I think, 4 rows of bunks. So that was 40 people that was in that cell. So that's what I was there for. I was supposed to be there for 5 years, but I was there a year and a few days, and they come down and they said, you've got a visitor. I said, who would visit me? I'm in Germany. Nobody under God's earth knows I'm here. Who would visit me? They said, well, you've got a visitor. So they took me upstairs, and my captain was standing there. He said, boy, you hard to find. And I said, well, I guess so. I said, man, he said, well, let me tell you, we're working with the Pentagon. We'll get you out of here in just a little bit. He said, it'll take about a week, but we'll be back for you. And I said, okay. So I went back downstairs then, and I stayed there for a week, and they come back and they got me out. Well, their condition was if they got me out, they would send me home. So they got me out, and they told me, they said, we're going to have to send you home. And so they discharged me. They sent me home, and that's how I come up with the dots on my hand and I've been living with them ever since. And if I've been asked that question once, and all the time I've been home, I've been asked it 1,000 times, but that's all right. People don't know, they need to know. I had one person say to me, you're part of the Hell's Angels. And I said, do what? Well, you're a preacher and you got them dots. You're part of the Hell's Angels. I said, you're nuts. He said, that's what the Hell's Angels have on their hands. I said, I don't know nothing about them. Never did know nothing about them. I said, and this don't have nothing to do with that. I said, I got this in Germany. I sure didn't get it here. So now that you know that I was there for 5 years, going to be there for 5 years. I ended up being there for a year, and I think 1 month and 5 days, and then they sent me home, and that was it. That's the end of the story. And so I'll try to come back again and give you another story, and I'll try to make it a little bit quicker. And until I do see you again, I pray the good Lord to keep you and protect you and watch over you. I pray He'll bless you real good, and He'll supply your every need and take care of every circumstance in your life. And remember, I'm praying for you. And until we see you again, bye-bye.